Welcome, one and all, to the latest edition of Signals from Mars. We welcome Mr. Jeremy Weltman, Mr. Patron's Pick. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Victor. I've had flu for a couple of weeks, as you know, but I'm fighting fit again, and I'm wearing my Signals from Mars hoodie is back on, so everything is right with the world. How are you doing over there in Spain?
I'm doing well. I have one of those hoodies upstairs, actually. It is keeping me warm in these winter months, these rainy winter months. And I will say that we did miss you for the Iron Maiden episode. And I will always say this, it is always great to have Jeremy on for these album rankings or music discussions in general, just because you obviously grew up with Maiden being a big historical band in the UK, one of the biggest ever to come out of the UK, especially
Mm,
for the metal scene. So it would have been cool to have your input. But what we're doing today is we're going to be talking about new releases that have come out in November and December. But before we jump into that, since we do have Jeremy here, let's run down this Iron Maiden list real quick to see if he's okay with how things shook out. We
okay.
did have the Final Frontier at 17, Virtual 11 at 16, X Factor at 15, Book of Souls 14, Dance of Death 13, Senjutsu 12, A Matter of Life and Death 11, No Prayer for the Dying 10, Fear of the Dark 9, Brave New World 8, Iron Maiden 7, Killers 6, Somewhere in Time 5, Seven Son of a Seven Son 4, Peace of Mind 3, Power Slave 2, and Number of the Beast 1. And
Mm,
as I mentioned when we did the show, 3 is 2 points behind 2, and 2 is 2 points behind 1. And Power Slave flip flopped with Number of the Beast with the very last vote. So,
mm.
anything that you want to mention about
Yeah,
the order?
yeah. The first thing is you've spoilt my weekend because I was going to listen. I was going to catch up on that show and listen to it,
Oh
but
no!
that's fine. That's fine. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I thought I was quite surprised. Final Frontier was the lowest one of the 17 because personally I don't think it's the worst.
Mhm.
But I suppose it depends how everybody ranks their stuff. I mean, Number of the Beast. What can you say? It was a very sort of it was a change for the band, wasn't it? It sort of
Right.
brought them on and made them superstars. So it's an incredible album, and I can see why it would feature as number one. I mean, my favorites were probably I think I sent in Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, which I think is a marvelous album. Brave New World is amazing. I do like A Matter of Life and Death, although I do think it fades a little bit towards the end. The thing about Iron Maiden albums is that I also think that they have many good songs on, but they're not all fantastic albums all the way through. Without the odd filler. So to finish number one, you've got to be a super album, and maybe Number of the Beast is one of those. When you listen to it all the way through, it's a killer. So yeah, it's great. Although it's not killers, it's a killer.
It's funny because this album is probably out of the original run, the original big run by the band. It's probably my least favorite. Going into it, it was my least favorite.
Okay.
And then I started listening to it. I'm like, man, this isn't that bad. I'm burnt on some of these songs from hearing them so much,
Mm,
but setting that aside, it's a powerful album. It's a big album. It's a very important album. And
mm.
I thought back to going to see shows in New Jersey at the what's called the PNC Bank Arts Center, formerly the Garden State Arts Center. Uh, Almost every metal show they play Number of the Beast before the first band hits the stage. Um, hearing "Run to the Hills," on regular radio, hearing "Number of the Beast" around Halloween all the time as well. So, I mean, the album is a big deal. So I get why it's number 1. It's not my number 1. It
Mm.
was my number 6 actually. For me, we coincided on number 1. Seven Sun was my number 1.
Yeah, it's a pretty perfect album, that one, isn't it? When you think
Yeah.
about it, and when you listen back to it, yeah, yeah, it was certainly a peak, I think, for them.
Yeah, I also think, it's interesting how X Factor and Virtual 11 were kind of grouped together, and also the Paul Di'Anno albums were grouped together.
Mm,
So I found that pretty interesting also. I also, yeah, similar to what you're saying, that I think that those first 7 albums are are great.
mm,
Some greater than others,
mm,
but I think that after Seventh Son, there's a huge drop off. And a lot of people attribute Bruce not being there for the 2 Blaze albums, but I honestly think that Adrian Smith not being there is a bigger issue. Martin Birch not being involved is a bigger issue than
mm,
Bruce not being there. And I think that the Blaze albums, listening back to them, they don't suck, but they're missing things. They're missing a certain intricacy that made those first albums special. And it's not a knock on Yannick, it's not a knock on Dave Murray, but neither one is Adrian Smith.
no, that's right. Yeah,
A- Adrian has something to his playing, something to the spice that he adds to the mix that just makes it special. It's just that. I mean, there's no other way of looking at it. And I think, to me, I mentioned this on the live show. The 2 Blaze albums remind me of Deep Purple with Steve Morris, where the albums aren't terrible, but they don't have that fire that some of these classics have. So I think there's a lot of that. There's some good songs on the Blaze albums. I don't think that they maybe get the credit that they deserve, and I think that there are some songs that are even better than some of the later albums that people herald. So,
yeah. I just feel I found them difficult listens, to be honest, and I think that I mean, we've all got large collections of Iron Maiden albums, and
right.
if you reach out to your collection as you do, now and again to listen to Maiden, do you ever pick out those? I mean, I haven't actually bought those, so it'd be difficult for me to reach out and grab those two. But if you were listening on Spotify or something else like that, you wouldn't really play those albums over any other. Um, Difficult listens for me. I think they're not really proper Iron Maiden albums. I don't consider them that. I don't think many people in the UK ever consider them, proper Maiden output.
They're close. They're definitely closer to Steve Harris's British Lion albums.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I would also say that when you hear Bruce do Sign of the Cross or Klansman or even Future Real, I'm trying to think of what other Blaze era songs that they've done with him in the band. I don't think many people have complained about those songs with the current lineup doing them. So
yeah,
so
yeah.
there are good songs there. Um,
But they needed the current band doing them, and that's the big difference.
yeah, that could be the case, definitely. But I think, again, I don't think that Blaze is the sole reason why those tracks or albums didn't hit the spot. I
Mm,
think that there was a lot of humility missing within the band, where there were too many egos at play, one huge ego anyway. And I think that kind of sorted things out with Bruce and Adrian coming back.
mm.
That said, I do think that there's still a certain amount of madness and runaway with these last few albums that can kind of be pulled back, but that's another discussion. The other thing, real quickly here, which we didn't get to speak to you about, if I'm not mistaken, is the new Bruce track.
Mm, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I I think overall I didn't like it. There were
Okay.
elements of it that I thought were okay. There was a heaviness to it. I just find that the whole concept, when he's trying to pick a concept like this, and he's, it's sort of aimed at teenage kids rather than, the older crowd who would have followed Bruce as well. And I just feel that it didn't really grab me. It's not something that I went back to, something that I really thought was excited by, something that I thought would be a lead into something great. Having said that, I will listen to the rest.
Right.
I'm not going to just turn it away. And we know that Bruce has done very different solo albums, and so this could be a very different type of thing. And we should give it time and listen to it. Maybe it'll grow. I don't know. Some things do grow on you, but overall, I wasn't that impressed with it.
Yeah, I want to see and hear ultimately what he does do,
Mm,
because I've said this a million times. I like his solo output more than what Maiden has done. That said, this song hasn't convinced me yet.
no, it
And
had a little bit of. Do you think it had a little bit of sort of Book of Souls feel at that era? I think he sort of did it around that time, and it's like a bit of a cast-off song, because we know that he did a song and it went onto the album, but he was going to keep it for his solo stuff, wasn't he, at the
yeah,
time?
if Eternity Should Fail, the lead
Mm,
off track. Yes. I think
mm,
that's pretty accurate, because my first thought was this sounds more like modern Maiden than it does Bruce Solo.
yeah.
So, and then the video, seeing him, I'm like, wow, I know that Arthur Brown is a big inspiration, but this is kind of trying too hard to be Arthur Brown.
Mm,
With the whole cape and all this stuff. And yeah, I get it. Oh, it's a druid type thing, or it's a Freemason type thing, or whatever. Right. But Arthur Brown was kind of like the guy that pioneered that, when it came to from a music standpoint. So we'll see. I'm
mm,
hoping out hope,
mm.
but man, it's hard. It's hard. Accident of Birth, Chemical Wedding were just so good.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think, similar to what we're saying about that run of Maiden albums, I truly think that for all of the faults that Balls to Picasso and even Skunkworks may have, I think you take from Balls to Picasso to Tyranny of Souls, and I'd be hard pressed to find another artist who's put out a body of solo material that strong.
Mm,
I know a lot of people like Tattooed Millionaire, but Tattooed Millionaire is almost Bruce just doing an AC/DC album to me. It's outside of 2 or 3 songs, it's kind of one dimensional to me.
mm,
But those other albums, just have elements to them and songs to them that I still listen to all the time. And to your point, when Accident of Birth came out, the first song was Freak. I heard that and I was like, what the hell is this? Bruce Dickinson with a fast, aggressive, downtuned song. I'm like, what is this? And to your point, that comes out at the same between X Factor and Virtual 11. I'm like, yeah, this is what I want, not
mm,
that other stuff. And then Chemical Wedding is even heavier, and the leadoff single to that was The Tower. That's the song. And I remember a local radio station was playing that the first time that I heard that, and just hearing the chorus to that, Lovers in the Tower, the moon is undivided, let the whatever. I'm messing the lyrics up, but one listen, The melody was in my head. To this day, it's there.
Mm,
So this song hasn't done that. This new
no.
song. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. that,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can never say never. You got to listen to the whole thing in
yeah,
its entirety. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. So let's get on with what we're here to talk about, which is releases from November and December. And let's see, going all the way back to November 3rd, we had new releases by Angra, Bad Wolves, Dirty Honey, Green Lung, Silent Planet, Cranium, excuse me. Satan's Fall, Dying Wish, Serenity, Sagir. I knew there had to be one I couldn't pronounce somewhere along the way. Svartanot, Dying Wish, Melancholia, Contrast, Zoth, Mourn, Youth Fountain, Graven Sin, Fuming Mouth, Carnal Tomb, Mortuary Drape. EPs from Spirit Box. I guess the Melancholia is a EP. All right. Let me correct that. Insomnia. I guess the Mourn is an EP as well. Folks, I don't get all the information when this stuff is sent to me, so I do my best to sort this stuff out. And one last EP from Mugshot, live albums from Watain, and a compilation from Static X, which has actually been pushed back to 2024. So this is the original date. Jeremy, anything from the third that you listened to that stood out to you?
I'm pretty sure the listener actually enjoys you reading out the names of the bands more than the discussion sometimes, because it's a fun listen. There's so many strange names out there and hard to pronounce ones as well, which is. But yeah, I listened to Cycles of Pain by the Brazilian
Okay.
band Angra. This actually is not a band I've heard much of, if I'm honest. But apparently they've been going since the 1990s, and they're
Yeah.
about 10 studio albums in now. So maybe I have heard them in the past. I just don't recall them really. This album was quite a nice blend of progressive power metal. There was even a small dose of Brazilian music on the song Vida Seca. I think it's Vida Seca, or however you pronounce that. The songs were very well thought out, I thought, and well constructed. They had some very nice melodies, and I thought, it was a really nice listen, that one. I also tried out Can't Find the Breaks, the second studio album by the LA band Dirty Honey. I really like their first album, and I quite like this style of music, as you probably could guess. It's very sort of classic stuff, almost Southern influence rock and roll, very early Aerosmith, Black Crowes, Led Zeppelin, that sort of stuff. I must say, though, I was a little bit underwhelmed by this on my first listen. I put it to one side for a while, and then I did have another go, and it did start to bite a bit. So this is always the thing you should, if you don't like an album, maybe just put it to one side and then have another listen again, because you might get to like it eventually. You might be in the mood. It's certainly a band that I think I'd like to see live. It's very good sort of old style rock and roll, but it really works when you get into the grooves and get into what they're doing. So yeah, I think maybe Dirty Honey was my album of that week.
Okay. I got to listen to the Dirty Honey as well. I didn't think it was bad at all. Very much in line with everything that you said. Very much in line with their first album. I got to listen to the Spirit Box EP, which I really enjoyed as well. I know that they've been hit or miss for a lot of people on Patreon. I know that Courtney's vocals don't always go over well, but I really enjoy them. But my pick would be Green Lung, this Heathen Land. And the band is a mix between a classic heavy metal, doom, and stoner rock band. They released something last year that caught my attention as well, so it made me listen to this one, and it's my pick. Figure since you picked the Dirty Honey, I'll go with this one.
Okay.
Cool. So on November 10th, we had new albums from Frogman, Tarja, The Mosaic Window, Nick DiVirgilio, Neil Morris and Ross Jenkins, Temple Balls, Sonic Sphere, Horsewhip, Hinaya, I guess, Night Crowned. Yes. Schleima.
Here we go.
Schleima Gofrenar. Schleima Gofrenar. Locket, Hugo's Voyage, Receiver, EP from Sodom, Holy Wars, and Lower 13, reissues from Meshuggah, and Bleed from Within. Anything stand out to you this week?
I wonder what Gene Simmons thinks of unpronounceable names. I'm sure he thinks something of them.
Let's see. Let's ask Gene.
I love the sound of my own voice, and sometimes I get carried away.
There we go. So I actually listened to quite a few albums this week. I listened to Whispers of Law by Receiver. I listened to Tales by Night Crowned and Resurrection of the Flesh, which was a live album by Triumph of Death.
Okay.
So if you don't know Triumph of Death, they're basically the Hellhammer tribute that includes the former Hellhammer member Tom Gabriel Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they were the black metal act from 82 to 84, sort of fairly short span, really. And they didn't really register much with me at the time. But I was aware of them and aware of the name. And I can't say either that black metal is my thing, but I really enjoyed this. So I really suggest the listeners check this one out because it really rocked and I liked it. But my pick of the week of all of them is more traditional territory for me, at least. It's Avalanche, the new album by the abominably named Temple Balls, which you've put up in Patron before, and we've had a go at the name. The band from Finland, of course. It's their third studio album. Choice of band name because it really can rock. The guitars rock out, as you might expect from a Nordic outfit. They've got a great vocalist as well. It's a very polished album. It's very well produced. It's nothing new. It will remind you of Def Leppard, of Tesla, of Tigers of Pantang, those sort of bands. All the influences are there, but it's a very decent, fun listen, and it's rock and roll, and it's my pick of the week, Temple Balls.
Cool. To be honest with you, the only thing that I really listened to from this week was an EP from the band Holy Wars. They are a British band, if I'm not mistaken. Before I screw this up, I believe they're a duo. Thing like doing a research on the spot.
For those listening to the podcast, Victor is actually searching as we speak.
Yes. And their website is taking forever to load.
And you can actually join his Patreon group for as little as $2.
There you go. And while we're at it, let me just throw up the Patreon QR code.
Here we go.
Jeremy did show the hoodie before.
There it is. It's a real good quality hoodie, that nice and warm for the winter.
Yeah, yes, they are,
and good for the summer. From the late shows outside when it gets cold.
There you go. You've also got the T-shirt. You've got the windbreaker jacket.
Again, great for festivals, that one.
And you've got the bomber jacket as well. So
also would look great at a festival.
See that? We've also got I need to add the baseball cap as well to this, and also the winter beanie.
Yeah, and I'll be getting a baseball cap very shortly. So
Oh, wow.
people, if they tune in future episodes, may see that live.
There you go. So just go to signalsfrommars.com and you can find a link to the merch store, all the social media platforms where you could follow the show, also all the various podcasting platforms, or where you could check out the replay of this specific stream. And also with some of this merch, if you do go to Patreon, depending on the tier, you would get one or the other. Anyway, yes, Holy Wars is a duo. They are a newer band, new to me anyway, before hearing them. They add a lot of different like electronic elements to what they do. So if you're thinking of them sounding like Megadeth because of the song Holy War, no, they don't. But I don't know. It sounded cool to me, kind of jumped out at me and jumped out at me more than some of the other things that were released. And due to just lack of time, that's the band, or that's the EP that I chose to listen to. I will go back and listen to Temple Balls, for example, after Jeremy has recommended them. So at the end of the day, that's why we do this. November 17th. All right, let's see where I slip up here. Let's see, maybe Gene Simmons will laugh if I come across a difficult name. All right, so we have new albums by Earthside, Sadis, Plain White Tees, Nail Within, Diamolic Night. Okay, did I mess the B and the M up there and it was Diabolic Night? I don't know. DGM, Plague Mance, The Refreshments, Bull Elephant.
What sort of a band name is that? Bull Elephant.
Yeah.
Strange. I'm sure they're great.
They didn't go over well on Patreon. Neurectomy. All right. Eldritch, Care of Night, Condemned, Scion, Graven Sin, Harmageddon, Post Prophet. Actually, Post Prophet is an EP. Windwalker, Earthside, and Grand EPs from Nonpoint, the aforementioned Post Prophet, Celeste, Falian Fall. All right, so Condemned and Neurectomy are EPs. And Grind Failure. We have reissues from Death Haven and 3 from Camelot. Dean laughs anyway. All right. So what is your pick for this week?
Yeah, this one was a very difficult week for me. There were quite a few, very few noteworthy albums to choose from. I would mention 2. The first is Life by DGM, the Italian progressive band. They've been going since the 1990s, and this is their 11th studio album now. So there's a lots to like about this album, actually. Not least, they have a really good vocalist in the guise of Mark Basile. I like him, and some really sort of excellent Sons of Apollo style sort of guitar progressions, and a really professional sound overall as well. So that's very worthy of a listen if you like that kind of metal. The other one worth mentioning is Plague by the Swedish band Corroded. This is a sort of doom-laden, Machine Head, Zakk Wylde, Sabbathy influenced type of music. It was actually really good, just what I was looking for on that particular week, and would be, a worthy pick in any week, I think. The band managed to combine their sort of down tuning with a significant dose of melody, and it works really well. I would suggest, listening to the song Dead Rest Tears in brackets, and you'll maybe get what I mean from it. So out of the 2, I would pick the Corroded as my album of the week.
Okay, cool. For me, it's the EP from Post Profit called Self Defeater. They are an LA band, and similar to what you mentioned with Temple Balls, nothing new. This is 90s style alternative metal, alternative hard rock, in the vein of a lot of different things that came out of the 90s. I think it sounds really cool. It's cool to see younger bands doing this kind of music, and it's got cool melodies, cool hooks with it, got soloing. So there are some things that some people would see as upgrades from what we got in the 90s from some bands, and it caught my attention right away. So Post Profit Self Defeater is my pick for the week. And let's see, moving on to November 24th, we had new albums from High Spirits, Destructor, Jetboy, Hittin. Excuse me, doing my New Jersey accent. My New Jersey accent would be hidden. So even though it's two T's, Hittin. Strange New Dawn, Aeolian, Burden of Grief, EP from Dungeon Wolf, reissues from Devin Townsend, Spock's Beard, and a compilation from Lillian X. So, how about this week?
Yeah, so this week I gave the thumbs up to the album Unyielding, Unrelenting by Silent Angel. This one had quite an old school feel to it, I thought. It was a sort of a nice mix of new wobble and power metal with a female singer. They're an Italian-Malaysian mix band, and despite a very low production budget, there's some very likable songs here played with tempo, and they certainly make they'd make a very good support act, I think, so I like that. I also quite like the new Destructor album, Blood, Bone and Fire, had some classic metal and thrash riffing on it. To be honest, if you'd had a bad day and you've played your Metallica or your Testament albums to death, you can't go wrong with this. It's the Cleveland band's first album in 6 years. There are shades of Anvil in there, but it's a really good bash around the drums, so I like that one. My album of the week, though, is Safe on the Other Side by High Spirits. It's a sort of upbeat new album-influenced metal band from Chicago. It's their 6th studio album, and based on this, I'd like to go for a deep dive into the rest of their catalogue. They seem to have at least carved out a nice, fairly unique band sound, and I really like the production on it as well. There was a little bit of touch of Volbeat about it, which I can give or take because I'm not a massive fan of Volbeat, but some very nifty, tight guitar work. And at no point did I think the quality dipped, so I highly recommend it. That probably is my album of the week in a reasonable week, I thought.
Okay. And my pick for this week is also Safe on the Other Side from High Spirits.
There we go.
I've loved the band since their first album. I turned Mark Striegel onto them back in the day, and I still play their first album all the time. And there are tracks from every subsequent album that are in my High Spirits playlist that I play all the time. So this is my pick, and this is one of these albums that I need to revisit before my end of year list, only because I was undecided as to what songs really stood out to me because I liked a good percentage of this album. So for me, this is my pick for this week as well. So real quickly here, we're going to go over some of the stuff in December. Obviously, we're almost at the halfway mark here. Just some things that kind of stand out to me. On the first, we had the long-awaited Cobra Spell album. Been posting about that. Sonia Anubis, who's been on the show before. This is her band. On the first, there were also new live albums from Robin Ford and Voodoo Circle. On the 8th, we had a new live album by Blue Oyster Cult. 50th anniversary live, first night, excuse me. This Friday, we will have a new live album by Children of Bodom, which is their final show in Helsinki, or their final show, I think, ever, actually, at the Helsinki Ice Hall from 2019. And on the 29th, there's an album from Dominium called Hey Living People. So, Jeremy, anything from December that kind of sticks out to you that maybe I didn't mention, or if any of these releases stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, one that I haven't actually listened to yet, which I'm planning to, is the Blue Oyster Cult live album, because I've got into Blue Oyster Cult a little bit as I've got older, and just I really liked their last album. I thought it was a fantastic album that came out a few years back now. One that I didn't purchase, and I regret that. I probably will go back and try and get hold of a copy at some time. So I'm looking forward to listening to that one. I did actually listen to The Beautiful Dark of Life by Atreyu, which I actually quite liked. I put it on in the background while I was doing something else, and every so often, a song came up and I thought, wow, that's powerful stuff. I like that. So so that was good. I listened to a few singles there. I'm not sure when they came out. They may have been in November, but I listened to the new Judas Priest one because it released now the second single, and I also listened to the new Saxon single. And so I'm looking forward to those albums coming out next year, which I think will be it's going to be an interesting year again.
Yeah, absolutely. I was cold on the first Priest single, but the second one really got me. It does sound like something off of Firepower, but I'm good with that. I'd rather that than having Living After Midnight Part 2. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, I'm looking forward to 2024, the year in music, where we will be doing this once again. This became a routine for us, a monthly hookup where we hooked you guys up with our recommendations and went down some of the stuff that really stood out to us. And we do have the best of 2023, favorites of 2023, however you want to call it, on the 22nd. So if you're undecided, you're gonna have, after listening to this, roughly 12 hours of material to listen to, where you can go back and say, hey, did I miss that album? Oh wow, so and so released an album that I didn't realize. So there's always good music coming out. Don't be a sloth. Search it out. And if nothing else, if our shows kind of give you a nudge to check something out, that's the reason why we do it. We love music. Jeremy and I love music. We're very like-minded in that sense. We may not always agree on certain albums or certain artists, but that's all right. That would kind of be boring if the result for the final week in November was what we did all the time. So it's always why I like trying to give you guys something different if possible, just because that way you've got two things to check out instead of one. So, any parting words, Jeremy?
Yeah, just that I'm really looking forward to the next couple of shows, and particularly that one you just mentioned. Just before Christmas, I'm sure there'll be the odd Christmas jumper popping up. We might pull a virtual cracker, and we'll have a bit of fun as we go along on that show. And it's going to be great because we'll see what the top 10 albums are of the year, which is always a fun listen, that one, and great to see the overall league table as we head into the next year, and some more great stuff coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. And before that show, we will have a show where we discuss our favorite debut albums, a concept that Mr. Weltman did come up with. And credit where credit's due, there's a lot of stuff that went on in 2023 that without Jeremy's help would not have taken place. So I do have to thank you, Jeremy, for always throwing ideas my way and helping out when there have been massive brain farts or just where my head wasn't in the right space to come up with stuff. Jeremy would throw stuff at me and, hey, wow, that's a cool idea. So we'd run with it. So a lot of the hour one shows were Jeremy's thing. And so thank you, Jeremy. And
you're very welcome, Victor. You're very welcome.
Yeah, and I got to make sure that I do this right. For anyone who's listening or watching this, stand and give Jeremy a round of applause. Oh, man. All right, guys. Well, I do want to thank everyone listening to this, everyone who took the time in what has started year 14 of podcasting for me, which started back in June. So we're halfway through the 14th year. We're in December right now. So thank you guys for those of you guys that have been here since the start. For anyone who's jumped onto the train along the way, I do want to thank you. And we're going to have a few special shows before the end of the year. We'll take a few weeks off after that, but we'll be back with, all fired up in January at some point in time. And thank you guys for listening to these shows. Let us know if you thought that if you guys enjoyed them. And even if you didn't, we'll be back with them anyway. So how about that? Anyway, thank you guys for all your support, and we will see you next time right here on Signals from Mars. See you, folks.
Thank you for watching the Signals from Mars live stream. You can watch the show live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, or check out replays on YouTube. Go to signalsfrommars.com for more information. This concludes our show.